I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to the FK News Update. I'm Chris Matthew. Joining me today is Cory Hughes. First, I have an exciting announcement. As I said the other day, we are having a fundraiser for production of Doors of Perception Part 2. We're hoping to have the means to travel to a location near you. Donations are greatly appreciated, or you can rent or purchase Doors of Perception 1 right now from our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. All those links are right in the description. But I'm very excited about the direction we will be bringing Doors of Perception to. I'll be focusing on psychedelic experiences, where the psychedelic industry is headed, healing applications, as well as the dark side, MK Ultra, weaponization, dark spiritual encounters, and magical applications. If you live near Colorado and you're involved with the rapidly expanding magic, mushroom, and psychedelic industry, healing centers, or spiritual applications, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. We may just feature you in Doors of Perception 2. Now I'm going to bring Cory on. He is an author, researcher, host of Bloody History, and co-host on Day Zero. Cory, welcome back. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
I know you have some exciting announcements. Before we get to those, the big news in JFK world, of course, is the release of new files. I haven't covered anything on this yet, but we have the perfect person right here to get any information if there is anything worthy to discuss. But what are your thoughts on it?
Well, like every prior JFK document release, this has been one big red herring. They're the things that we want to know, they're never going to give us. And the things that we need to know, we've already got the documents for. The most important documents ever, we already have, and we've had for many decades. And so the idea that they're going to give us any kind of document that says, oh my God, the CIA did it, or anybody else, to me is utterly ridiculous. When you really come to understand the FBI documents and you come to understand what's in the Kennedy files, you come to realize the most important documents aren't in the Kennedy files. You'll find them in the mob files, and you'll find them in the Israeli files, and you'll find them in files that have nothing to do with Kennedy, because everything has to do with Kennedy. And that's the thing that people really don't grasp. When it comes to the 20th century and studying the 20th century, everything leads to Kennedy, and therefore everybody is connected to it in one way, shape, or form. It's hard to avoid. So I'm very disappointed. There have been a couple documents that indicate the CIA was doing stuff in America when they're not supposed to. You know, that's the biggest thing. The CIA is not supposed to operate in America, ever. But they do, and they have, and they always have. And the fact that they're not supposed to, that just really seems to be one big lie. So that stuff has been kind of uncovered a little bit. Some CIA communications showing that they were doing stuff in America. That's kind of come out, but we already knew this stuff, right? So that's another thing. A lot of documents that people are kind of excited about really are just telling us things that we've already known forever. You know what I mean? Whether or not we had the actual document proof is irrelevant. We know the CIA operates here, and they're not supposed to. And so
I don't know how many people actually were aware of a lot of the stuff that's come out, but I was, because of your work mainly. You have discussed a lot of the things that are popping up here and there with slight relevance, but you've been talking about that for a very long time.
Yeah.
So you're saying there was really nothing else that you could really pull from these files that would be beneficial to your work?
Not at all, because the things that I'm interested in are the things they're never going to give up. Like, I spent the last 8 months or so studying Oswald and his early life up until 1959. And it becomes brutally obvious when you start to dig into the details of Oswald's life that half the story we're told about Oswald can't be true, because we have clear indications of Oswald living in two different places, going to two different schools throughout most of his life up until he goes and joins the Marine Corps in October of 56, right? So really what we have is from 45 to 56, 11-year period where the official story only covers half the story, right? The official story of who Oswald is and where Oswald was and what Oswald was doing and who he's connected to. These things are really exposed in these years of 45 to 56 as the official story not being possible to be true, right? And then when you start to really dig into Oswald's family, it becomes obvious. Oswald's mother had joined the Navy Waves program in 1941. History has completely covered this up. She let slip at the Warren Commission that she was a phone operator for the Navy in Algiers in 1942. Well, that's not only impossible, the implications of her statement indicate that she had in fact joined the Navy. You see, the Navy created the WAVES program, which is a Women in the Navy program for civilians in America, because everyone was off at the war, right? 41, 42, you have the vast majority of resources for the military focused on World War II. So they had a great need for civilians to come in and fill very basic tasks, right? Like running the phones. But if you ran the phones, you had to have a security clearance because you're connecting people who have a security clearance, right? So just by admitting she was a phone operator for the Navy in 42, she inadvertently admitted a dozen other things that are completely implied by that statement. That's not covered in any of the new documents, right? And not only that, they've gone to great lengths to cover up the fact that Marguerite Oswald had joined the Navy. The addresses that she gave are bad for those years, and we can trace the addresses to good addresses in New York City where she's not supposed to have lived, right? So you have major obfuscation by the government covering up the real role of Marguerite Oswald, and then her sister, who Jim Garrison, who had, famously prosecuted Clay Shaw down in New Orleans. He had basically come to the conclusion that the whole family was CIA because his cousin, Marilyn Dorothea Moret, she was listed in the newspapers in 1955 as being one of the most wanted defectors to the Soviet Union. But she wasn't a false defector to the Soviet Union, right? She was clearly CIA traveling to all these different Eastern Bloc countries and China and a whole bunch of other countries that people don't go to in the 50s, right? And so it's pretty clear the whole family was CIA. Do we get any documents on that? No. We never got any documents on that. We're never going to get any documents on that because then you have to answer a lot of questions about Oswald that people don't want to answer. Like, how is it possible that Oswald was living in two different places at once for the majority of his life, right? So once you start to get into that stuff, you start to realize that the Kennedy assassination is just one little blip in the life of Oswald, really, that had nothing to do with the Kennedy assassination, and he was clearly involved with intelligence. Are they ever going to tell us this? No. So the entire story of the documents and the document releases and them finally getting to the bottom of this, no, because they'll have to expose their ways and means. They'll have to expose the tradecraft that goes on. You'll have to expose the half a dozen people who have body doubles in the Kennedy assassination, which they're never going to do, right? So there's a lot of things that we're just never going to get because they can't, because they're national security issues. So the whole thing is, it was really stupid of them to use Oswald in the first place as the patsy, because by using him, you get people digging into his life. And when you dig into his life, you discover a lot of this stuff. They were setting up additional patsies, and if they had used any one of them, the story could have been closed in a matter of weeks, legitimately. And they could have just put the blame off on it, and then no one would ever know the difference. But no, their hubris thought they could wrap up a bunch of loose ends at once, and they ended up creating a bunch of loose ends.
Well, you mentioned Oswald. What else has your work been focusing on lately? And I know you have an exciting announcement as well about the book.
Yeah, so the book has been doing great over the past, it's been a year and a half the book's been out now. And so I should have done this a long time ago, but finally we have the audio book, I'm finished recording it. It should be finished being edited this week. And I have it scheduled for a May 1st release date, but we're doing a couple things. Anybody who, and it's available right now at buymeacoffee.com/slash JFK book. If you pre-order the audiobook, you also get the PDF of the book itself, and you get my 600 plus page note collection, all for $20. And so that you can go and pick up right now. And that's the next big thing as far as the book goes. I'm really torn as to what to do next because I've already got a stack of information on Oswald that I need to write up into the next book, which will be the unbelievable story of Harvey Lee Oswald. And the name Harvey Lee Oswald pops up a lot, more than to where it's just coincidence or a mistake, right? So I've got well over 50 or 60 documents where the government used the name Harvey Lee Oswald, not because they were making mistakes, but because they knew something that the rest of us didn't. So I've already got a whole nother book really outlined right now, but I understand that process is a very long and hard one, and realistically, from the time if I started today, that book would be out about a year from now. So there's other things I want to do in the meantime. We're talking about doing the documentary, which I think would be great. But one thing I am doing right now, for most people who aren't aware, I do a World War II Substack, which is very popular. We've now got over 100 subscribers to my Substack. Right now, I have 16 copies of my book right now available. Everybody who signs up for the Substack and pays the $50 for the year will get a signed copy of my book sent to them for free. So that's the deal that we're pushing today. Anybody signs up for the Substack, you will get a free autographed copy of my book.
I'll have all those links easily accessible for everyone in the description. Anything else in JFK land before we move on that is worth mentioning?
Yeah, so I just finished a 90-minute video on David Ferrie and the Grassy Knoll and the Winterland, because David Ferrie was one of 2 shooters on the Grassy Knoll. And let me, if I can screen share. Yeah, open up screen share for me. I'll just screen share one picture real quick, and everyone should go over and watch my video. There'll be a link in the description. But if you want to really understand David Ferrie's role in the assassination, what happened on the Grassy Knoll, and the complete debunking of his alibi, then that is most certainly the place to go. All right, let me pull up this. I want to pull up one picture real quick, which will basically make the whole case. That's a picture of David Ferrie walking through the railroad yards right after he shot Kennedy from the Grassy Knoll. He was one of 2 shooters on the Grassy Knoll, the other being Jack Valenti. But David Ferrie is wearing in Dealey Plaza the only suit that he owned and the only hat that he owned, which was described by numerous people in Dealey Plaza as having been a black felt hat with a wide band. And here you go. Clearly, David Ferrie walking through the railroad yards immediately after he shot Kennedy. So anybody interested in how that went down, most certainly go and check that out.
Right on. There's one more thing I wanted to cover before we kind of close out for the day. The markets have been quite volatile, and those that have crypto investments are sweating a little bit. I'd like to get your thoughts. I know you're huge in the crypto space. How do you feel about everything?
Everything. Here's the thing. The crypto markets are going to go further down, and not because of anything that's happening. If you come to understand the crypto markets over a long period of time, you understand they have these huge waves of enthusiasm, right? And the prices go way beyond where they should be, and then they fall back. If you look at the history of Bitcoin, it's had multiple 90% falls, 80% fall, 70% fall, 60% fall. And so I've been anticipating for quite a while somewhere in the neighborhood of a 40 to 50% fall, which should bring us down to the high 50s again, 58, 60,000. And I think we're going to see that. And people are going to freak out. Crypto's dead. You know, Bitcoin has been dead like 500 times now. And it's still the most appreciated asset in all of human history. So Bitcoin's going to multi-millions of dollars. And it's in everyone's best interest to acquire some, even a very little bit. But overall, I think the crypto markets are just having an identity crisis. You know, the meme coin craze showed that people are just desperate to put their money into anything, and they're willing to gamble on it. You know, it's like Las Vegas. And that's because there hasn't really been any crypto projects that pop up that have any real worth or value or do anything. And so, but that's changing. That's going to be changing here soon, I think. You're going to see a lot of things pop up that are going to change the way that crypto operates. And I think that it's got a very good future ahead of it.
One more time before we close out for the day, let everyone know the best way to access all your content, get your book, Substack, all the good stuff.
Yeah, CoryHughes.org is the best place that has all my links. My Substack, like I said, a free signed copy of my book if you sign up for the year-long $50 Substack subscription. And it's bloodyhistory.substack.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Cory. We will be talking again soon. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all. The Forbidden documentary, Doors of Perception, is available now for rent or purchase from our Vimeo site listed in the description below. We also have a new Forbidden documentary series YouTube channel for trailers, clips, interviews, and announcements. The nature of this experience seems to always be just beyond the reach of our science, technology, and consciousness collective.
There's layers upon layers upon layers.
It does add such an element of mystery to this place.
Why are we here?
We're getting closer to the truth now.
There's too many people experiencing profound interactions with conscious entities.
I'm focused on the non-human intelligence contact phenomenon in dreams. Dreams involve interactions with real entities.
People are waking up paralyzed. They're sensing or seeing something very evil in the room.
I have experienced sleep paralysis. Shadow people start to appear.
I was taken from my earliest memories by non-human alien entities. More and more people are wanting to talk about these things.
A ufologist would say, well, that's obviously an extraterrestrial. And a paranormal researcher would say, well, that's a ghost. Well, what if it's all of those things and none of those things? The entities, the intelligence that were just beyond our understanding.
There seems to be something a little extra that can take forms of anything.
I can't believe what I've seen, but it continues on a daily basis. We're definitely not alone. UFOs, UAPs, portals opening up.
I've lived with all this supernatural stuff. You kind of grow up with that around here. You see a lot of strange things. I don't like to talk about skinwalkers too much.
I had an experience with a skinwalker entity.
People, they would say they would transform into bears, into wolves. There's these bad things that occur. Ghosts, UFOs, and all types of things coming from somewhere.
Our beliefs, our emotions, and our fears all seem to heavily influence the nature of these experiences.
There is so much more that we just don't have time for in this busy, loud, noisy life that we lead.
All of this is planned. Everything is synchronicity.
There's so much more out there. We really are picking up such a small percentage of the electromagnetic spectrum.
The world is an amazing place.
It feels like we're gods in training.